Hello everybody and welcome to my review of A Complete Unknown, which opens on Christmas Day. This is usually the slot that is occupied by Charts with Dan, but the embargo just dropped for the movie, so I wanted to talk about it as soon as I could. Charts will be on later this afternoon, but let's jump into A Complete Unknown right now, which is a biopic of Bob Dylan covering the time from his arrival in New York City in the early 1960s to his now legendary, then infamous performance at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival when he introduced electric guitars to his music. James Mangold has already told the story of one legendary musician, Johnny Cash, in Walk the Line, and now he takes on the life of a second music icon, Bob Dylan. He also co-wrote the screenplay of this film with Jay Cox. This is Jay Cox's first screenplay work since Martin Scorsese's Silence back in 2016. Bob Dylan is an interesting figure in music history and just history in general, because he is both instantly recognizable and completely impenetrable. Everybody knows Bob Dylan, but very few people know Bob Dylan, and taking on this persona would be a tough task to ask any actor to do. But Timothée Chalamet proved to be a great choice for the job because he delivers a Bob Dylan that feels like a character, not a caricature, and it would be very easy to do a Bob Dylan caricature. And he's able to do this not just through his personality, but also to replicate Bob Dylan's singing voice, which is very singular, both capably and naturally. I like the movie Walk the Line, and I think that Joaquin Phoenix was very good in it. But from the very first time that I saw it, I've always been conscious of the fact that the movie features Joaquin Phoenix trying to sing like Johnny Cash. Both movies feature the lead actors doing the vocals live, but in this case, I felt like I was watching Bob Dylan, not Timothée Chalamet playing Bob Dylan. And Timothée Chalamet has all the hallmarks of being yet another overrated, overexposed young actor, except for the one small issue of him being extremely talented. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are just waiting for him to fail, but they're going to have to wait a while longer. I think that he's very much this generation's Leonardo DiCaprio in that he is a constant presence in the tabloids. He's got the poster boy good looks. He's got the rabid fan following, but he backs all of that up by being very, very good at his job. And he's been getting a lot of awards buzz for this role, and I think deservedly so. He has been on the ballots that I've submitted so far for End of the Year awards, and he will probably continue to be because I think that he's very, very good in this movie. A Complete Unknown supports Chalamet's performance with a really strong cast. Edward Norton plays Pete Seeger, the folk legend who takes Dylan under his wing and sees his dreams of mainstream folk acceptance realized, only for that dream to be threatened in his eyes as Dylan begins to branch out from his roots. Edward Norton is a great actor, always has been, and you see the soaring hopes of Pete Seeger and the crashing disappointments as the movie goes on. A lot of what we see of Bob Dylan is through Pete Seeger's eyes or through the eyes of people like him, and again, I think it may be because that character is so mysterious and so scrutinized by so many people. Elle Fanning plays Sylvie Russo, a fictionalized version of Dylan's real-life girlfriend at the time, Susie Rotolo, who passed away in 2011. And there was obviously a desire to shield her somewhat from the liberties that the movie decided to take. That's just natural when you fictionalize a story like this. And I enjoyed Elle Fanning's performance, but I felt that her character was stuck in a cycle of questioning her relationship with Bob Dylan, disapproving of what he was doing, and then being conflicted about whether or not they should get back together. I wonder if they rounded off some of the edges of her character because they did want to keep a little bit more distance and protect the really one of the only non-famous people that's in the movie. But I did feel like the character was missing some dimension. So while the performance was good, that was one of the weaker links in the film for me on a screenplay level. Monica Barbaro also co-stars as Joan Baez, the reigning icon of folk when Dylan appears on the scene, who finds herself both drawn to and threatened by his talent. Scoot McNairy plays Woody Guthrie, Dylan's inspiration, who's confined to a hospital with long-term illness, unable to speak. McNairy's scenes with Timothée Chalamet are some of my favorite in the entire movie. I loved how they wrote the dynamic between those two characters. And Boyd Holbrook blows on screen from time to time as Johnny Cash, a sort of spirit guide to Bob Dylan, who encourages him to mix things up, usually after a drink or several. This is not the same Johnny Cash that Mangold brought to the screen in Walk the Line, and is much more in line with his king of cool public image, perhaps a choice deliberately on Mangold's part to make sure that he was painting a character as seen through Dylan's eyes and not a retread of a movie that he made previously. The performances across the board are fantastic, some of the best I've seen in a movie this year. But this movie reminds me a little bit of Bohemian Rhapsody in that, stay with me, it features a lot of really great classic music that leaves you buzzing when you walk out of the theater, but I think is a bit shallow in fleshing out the person that it's ostensibly about. Now, I should note that I think this movie is better than Bohemian Rhapsody, but I didn't walk out of A Complete Unknown with much more understanding of Bob Dylan than when I came in. And maybe that's the goal, given Dylan's enigmatic nature, but it can be a bit frustrating at times, or at least it was for me. The major thread that's pulled on, especially as we get into the third act, is Dylan's desire to innovate, and the fact that he feels trapped by his fame. He wanted nothing more than to share his music with the world, but now people only want what he's already done, and they actively resist and push back against anything that he tries that's new. And I liked that. I think that's where the movie on a story level really came to life after already showing a lot of life with the music, with the performances, and everything else. This is on a much, much smaller scale, but I remember back in the days when I worked at Honest Trailers that if we ever did anything different after the show became established, we would hear about it, because once you define who and what you are, that's what people expect. And if you start to change things up, people can get a little bit nervous because they're worried that you're going to take away from them the thing that they already love. And this is what is happening with Bob Dylan in this movie on a scale times 1,000, much more culturally impactful and significant than a comedy web series. This gives the movie a direction in the third act that I enjoyed, but a lot of the rest of the film is pretty standard music biopic stuff. Dylan recording his first album, Dylan discovering his new sound on Like a Rolling Stone, Dylan clashing with the establishment. Walk the Line, which was directed by James Mangold, in many ways was the template for Walk Hard, the music biopic parody movie. And we see a lot of those tropes return now again from the same director in A Complete Unknown. It's kind of like a snake eating its own tail. And to a certain degree, it's inevitable because the lives of different musicians do have beats that you need to cover that are somewhat similar. They get discovered, they write their own music. But I wish that there'd been just a little bit more innovation on James Mangold's part when he was helping to craft the screenplay and in directing the movie that made this feel just a bit less familiar. It's tough, though, because we've already had a movie that's a meditation on the legend of Bob Dylan in an abstract way with Todd Haynes' film I'm Not There back in 2007, so maybe it was unavoidable that some of this would feel like well-trodden ground. Overall, though, A Complete Unknown is a solid movie. The music is undeniably great, and you get a lot of it through various concerts and recording sessions. The performances in the film are solid. Timothée Chalamet is able to channel what it is that made Bob Dylan so appealing. At least you do understand that as an audience member. And who knows, maybe the mystery of Bob Dylan is something that was never meant to be unraveled. I just wish the film had tried to do that a little bit more. Ultimately, though, on my personal scale, I'm going to give A Complete Unknown an It's Good rating, and I would recommend that you go see it as part of your holiday movie-going routine. A Complete Unknown is hitting theaters on Christmas Day, the same day as Nosferatu, and I really don't think you could go wrong with either of those films. But what do you think? Are you going to be heading out to see A Complete Unknown this holiday season? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to stay tuned right here for more movie news, reviews, box office, and more. I'll be back later on this afternoon with a new edition of Charts with Dan, but until then, stay safe, and I will see you then. Bye.